Hello, everyone, and welcome to Redesign Your Life Today. I'm Daniel Kobryner, your host, a mental fitness coach, and I help people uncovering what's holding them back from living the best life they can. And this podcast, it's really about transformation. It's about people who themselves had big transformations in their lives and help others to transform so that they really can live the most meaningful life they can. And today, I'm really privileged to have Jeff Patterson as our guest. Jeff is the creator of the yielding warrior method. It's a transformative approach that blends meditation, martial arts, and philosophy to help individuals harness inner strength and live with balance. With over 36 years of experience and three published books, Jeff has guided thousands worldwide to build personalized meditation practices that enhance mental, physical, and emotional well being. Welcome, Jeff, and it's really a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Well, you see, and so Jeff, first of all, I mean, this was a very brief introduction, but I'd like you to start a little with your story, because you do something which resonates very much with me, everything about meditation, and so can you please first advise how did you get to that? What was your journey?
Well, I started doing meditation at a fairly young age, and it was because of a boxing coach. So, as a young guy, I was very much into Western boxing,
Mhm.
and I just love the challenge and the strategy behind it. And it was for me um, something where I had to really come outside of my comfort zone in order to do the practice. And so I was really driven to try to be good. And at the boxing gym that I was at, one of the coaches that was there was a very well known coach. He had created champions on both the amateur and the professional arena,
Mhm.
but he wasn't looking to take on any new fighters. And so I really wanted to get to spend some time with him. So I would always show up at the gym when I knew he was going to be there, or followed him around and just try to get him to notice me. And after about 3 or 4 months of doing this, he finally started giving me some tips and showing me some things. And when he did, every time he gave me anything, I treated it like it was gold. I would be very disciplined and really work at it. And it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks of getting to work with him when he said something to me that changed my life forever. He said, if you really want to be a good boxer, you should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. Now, at the time, I'm this 19-year-old kid thinking, isn't that for like old people in the park? How's that going to help me be a better fighter? And I had a lot of respect for him, and I knew that he was trying to help me. And so I decided to take on the practice. And while I did have some ulterior motives to try to get to it, even though I was looking at it as a platform to make me better in the ring, it started changing other areas of my life. And I'll never forget like the realization I had one morning. I used to every morning I would do my practice where I would go down in my basement and I would train for an hour and a half doing these meditative practices that he was showing me. And it was about maybe the 6 or 7 month mark of doing a meditation practice when I went down in my basement and I looked up at the clock and an hour and a half had gone by and it felt like 15 minutes. I had this euphoric sense all around, and I was so taken by this feeling that I didn't know what it was. I didn't know why I was feeling that way. I couldn't explain it, but I knew I wanted to investigate it more. I wanted to see more of what was going on. And so at that point, things started to shift for me, and I started moving towards a real strong focus in the meditative arts. And, I've spent pretty much my entire adult life and career following the meditative path. And, I've traveled all around the world many times and trained with meditation practitioners from all over. And I've been very fortunate to get to train with some amazing people. And along the way, here at my academy in Portland, we've had over 26,000 students just come through our physical location, as well as thousands others through my online program. I've heard hundreds of stories of how the meditative arts has positively influenced people's lives and transformed their mental, physical, and emotional well-being. And that's what's made me so passionate about trying to get out there and share these arts with other people. And that's why my life's mission is to get out there and spread the word of this practice and try to help as many people as I can with it.
Wow, this is beautiful, really. And you talk about meditative arts. So I suppose there's a spectrum of arts. Can you tell us more about that? What are the various kind of meditations?
Yeah, so I break the actual desires in a meditation practice down to 5 paths. We have people that are drawn to the practice that want to come to improve their performance. Many professional athletes these days understand the value in meditation, and that's why so many athletes from sports around the world are turning to the meditative arts. Then you have the therapeutic path, people following the meditative practices to help their joint mobility and their overall health so they can um, age more gracefully. Then
Mhm.
you have people that are following it for the medical practices. All of Chinese medicine is based off of qigong theory. And so you use this for sickness and ailments, and people follow for that path. Then we have the philosophical path, which has always been, for me, where I've had a strong passion for, in that studying the philosophical side of the practice helps you expand your peripheral vision so you can see things from multiple angles and be more strategic about how you do things. And
Mhm.
then lastly, there is the spiritual side of the practice. And while all of these have their own values, if you will, there's different practices that we can adapt to help us follow any one of those paths. And those practices are going to be things like movement practices from Tai Chi and Qigong and yoga, walking meditations. Then there's still practices where we'll do sitting practices, standing meditation, breathing strategies where we'll do different breath work, and then philosophical practices that we'll use to train the mind to get different outcomes. And so, as we start to create an evolving life practice with the meditative arts, we'll pull things from all of these areas to craft meditation practice around our lifestyle.
Okay. So when you say around their lifestyle, imagine somebody coming to you, to your academy, and says, you know what? I heard that meditation is good, but I don't have a clue of how to start. And now you mentioned several times, Jeff. So how would, what would be the process of somebody completely new? How would you guide them? How, you know, what can be good for them, to
Yeah.
start?
You know, for teaching for over 30 years, one of the biggest challenges that I've faced is, how do I get a new student who doesn't see the value in this practice yet
Mm,
to be disciplined enough to stick with it so they can get to the point where they get all the benefits of the practice, where they have these life-changing experiences. And so I've tried many things through the years, and I've come down to where I'm at right now. I'm working with what I call the 3 considerations. And I find that if people spend some heartfelt thought in these 3 areas, that they're so much more likely to succeed with the practice. In the first consideration is understanding what is it that's drawing them to the practice.
Mhm.
Do they want to stay healthy into their later years so they can watch their grandkids grow up? Or do they want to improve their performance on the field for an athlete? Or whatever it is for them. Maybe they're dealing with a stress disorder and they're using this practice to overcome anxiety and panic attacks. When they have that reason, then I like them to take it a little bit further and think about if they accomplish that and that helps them with whatever reason that is, what are 10 or 20 things in their life that are going to positively change because they accomplish this goal? Is it their interpersonal communication, their relationships with others, their work experience, their improved performance, whatever that is, and really spend some time thinking about that. Then flip the coin. And if they don't do that, what are 10 or 20 negative things that will happen if they don't accomplish this? And what this does is it gives them the fuel for those days when the alarm goes off and it's time to get up and do your practice and you're tempted to hit the snooze button because you can do it tomorrow, right? Well, I want them to see so much value in this practice that rather than seeing it as a chore that they have to get up and do today, they start looking at it as something that they get to do. And they're so excited about getting to do it because they see all the value that it's going to bring to their life. And when they can make that mental shift, that's going to be huge. Then the second consideration is understanding the importance of consistency. And there's this Chinese story that I really enjoy that talks about why this is important. And it's about this old stonecutter who was very well known all over China for his beautiful sculptures that he would create of animals and landscapes. And his work was so unique that anytime somebody would see it, they just knew that it came from him because it was just so detailed and different than everything else.
Mhm.
Well, because of that, he would have people from all over the country that would come to stay with him for periods of time because they'd want to apprentice with him and learn the trade. Well, every morning, this old stonecutter would begin his day by walking down to the river and meditating. One day after his meditation session, he's walking along the river and he has this profound vision of this big 6 foot tall mystical Chinese jade dragon. He's so taken by the vision that he just knows that this has to be his next project. So he spends the next few months traveling all around China looking for the perfect piece of stone for his new creation. Once he found it, he brought it back to his place, and for the next period of time, he just sat with the stone, studying the stone, feeling the energy from the stone, envisioning how is this dragon going to appear out of the stone. A few days went by, and finally he started working on the stone. He carefully places his chisel on the backside of the stone and starts tapping away with his hammer to the exact same spot, hundreds, if not thousands of times every day to this exact same spot, and nothing changed. A few days went by and still nothing. A few more days went by, and his apprentices who were watching thought, why doesn't he try something else? It seems like this isn't working. A few more days went by, and finally he tapped the stone, and this big 3 foot section of the stone separated and created this smooth, slightly curved line that was soon to be part of the dragon's back. And one of his apprentices who was watching said, how did you know that that strike was going to break the stone? And the stonecutter replied, it wasn't that strike that broke the stone. It was the thousands of strikes before it that broke the stone. And with a bit of a discouraged tone, the apprentice said, but I've been watching you and there was no change, not even a scratch. Why keep doing the same thing over and over again? So the stonecutter, he got down on one knee and he felt the smooth line that he just created. And he said, each strike was not wasted. The stone was changing beneath the surface. And not only was the stone changing, so was the one who wields the hammer. And the reason why I resonate so well with this story is that this is the meditative arts. You know, we're practicing this breath work, these sitting meditations, these movement practices, and we don't always see the change happening day to day. But through our consistency and our effort, we're laying the foundation to reap the benefits of these practices for the rest of our lives. And so, understanding from the beginning that you really do need that consistent effort is extremely important. And then the third consideration is knowing that you need somebody in your corner to work with you. You have to have a guide. If you try to jump into this practice and be self taught, you're going to waste a lot of time and you're barely going to scratch the surface. As I mentioned, I've been studying for 36 years and I'm still a student learning all the time. It's so difficult to go out there and try to sift through the millions of videos out there on YouTube and all of the other resources you have and find a way to have any path or direct ideas as to how to create an evolving life practice with the meditative arts. So, for those of you that are new out there, if you really put some thought into why and the benefits that will come, the idea and understanding the importance of consistency and having somebody in your corner to show you the shortest path and the best tools to follow, your chances of succeeding are great.
Well, first, thank you for this fascinating story, about the man chiseling. And I mean, this is fascinating. And I have to say, what you say resonates very much with me as well, because it's like, New Year's resolutions. People say, I'm going to do this. And then I think statistics show that I think by mid-February, 90% have been abandoned. And people say, yeah, but you know what? I don't have the motivation any longer. But it's not about that because by nature, motivation fluctuates. It's got ups and downs. But as you said before, what makes a difference is discipline,
Yes.
is to do things that we don't always want to do, and we do them whatever. And we go and go and go. And this is it. It's not about being the best, but it's, as you say, it's being consistent. But in order to do that, what's very important, and you mentioned, I think you mentioned it, it's the why. Why do we do that? Because if it's not something compelling for us, we're not going to do that. We are going to stop. But if we know what is going to bring us, this is, and we go and we persist, and so, and this was a point, and the other point where you said these journeys we cannot do on our own. We need support. We need like-minded people. We need accountability. People who are going to support us again in this journey without judgment, but really wanting the best for us. So, thank you for for sharing this.
Oh, my pleasure.
And Jeff, there's this word expression. I'm French, you see, so sometimes, but I was fascinated by the expression yielding, yielding warrior. And I would like you to explicit this concept.
Yeah, yielding has been a fascination of mine for years. And in the martial arts, you always hear stories of the smaller guy beating the big guy. And you think about it, if somebody weighs 250 pounds and he's going up against somebody who's 150 pounds, they can crush him physically if they meet force to force. But yielding is teaching them how to not fight the force. And within yielding, I have three pillars of yielding that I focus on, and they are physical yielding, mental yielding, and emotional yielding. And physical yielding is that idea that we see in martial arts so much. And it's if I push you and you push me, whoever's the bigger, stronger person with the most leverage eventually is going to push the other person over. But with yielding, instead of us trying to see who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force. And now I can respond with less effort. So I'm not trying to butt heads with you and see if I'm bigger and stronger than you. And that's how smaller athletes can defeat bigger athletes. Now, in order to be good at physical yielding, a lot of things have to come into play. You need to be well rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your central equilibrium without getting tight. The body has to be relaxed, the breath has to be calm, and the mind has to be present. Now, while it is a lifetime journey to really master those skills, from day one, by integrating a meditation practice in your life, you start seeing these things with more clarity inside yourself. And when you do that, this is where it starts to become very interesting because not only do you see these things with more clarity inside yourself, but you also start to see these things with more clarity in other people. And this is where we move into what I call mental yielding. So, say, for example, you and I are having a conversation, and I say something that unsettles you, and I pick up on it right from the first sign of imbalance. It's a lot easier at that point to adjust the conversation and keep us in a harmonious path than if I'm not paying attention to that. And pretty soon I'm so far off track, you want to knock me upside the head. And so, learning how to use yielding in all of our interactions is extremely powerful. One, we're being more considerate, which is something that we could all do more of. And two, it allows us to be strategic and guide conversations to a positive outcome with the least amount of resistance. And this is powerful in relationships and sales and negotiations. And there's so many different applications of this. And then lastly, we have what we call emotional yielding. Emotional yielding is very much like mental yielding, but with our own interpersonal conflicts. So oftentimes something will happen to us and we'll respond and we'll go down this path and we might get an hour, a day, a week down the road and realize maybe that wasn't the best choice. But with yielding, in our heightened awareness by having a meditation practice in our life, we're able to step back when these things happen, not let our emotions get involved, be more present, and oftentimes make a more educated decision on how to deal with these scenarios that save us a lot of heartache on the other side. And I've been explaining this idea of yielding now for many years. I've been running my academy for 31 years. And one of the most common things I'll hear people say is yielding makes a lot of sense. In fact, I do yielding all the time. And while I would agree, I do think that everybody does some degree of yielding all the time. It's kind of like if you or I were to walk into a crime scene with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years, I guarantee you that person would see things about the series of events and the timeline that I know at least I would have no clue of. And the meditative arts helps us see things inside of ourselves and inside of others that I truly believe most people will go through life and never have any clue of unless they have a practice like this in their life.
Yeah, this is very, very powerful. And the, what comes to mind is first, the responding versus reacting. That very often, I mean, with our primary brain or uh, our oldest brain, it is wired for survival. So whenever there's something, we've got these reactions, fight, we flight, or we freeze. And the reptilian part of the brain. But we are the only species on this planet who has, and comes from our prefrontal cortex, the ability to catch these thoughts and afterwards to pause. And I think this is what we're talking about as well. I mean, like, for instance, taking a step back, grounding ourselves, breathing. And when we do that, we have this ability to respond with much more calm, with clarity. And the yeah, so it just came to mind. Is it something which resonates with you, Jeff?
Oh yeah, very, very much. And one of the things that I really do like about yielding is it by having that heightened awareness through meditation, everybody has some degree of awareness, no matter who they are. And some people, depending on what they do for a living, will have a higher level of awareness than other people and how they live their life and how distracted they are, how much they're looking at their cell phone. All of those things come into play. But by doing a meditation practice,
Mhm.
it forces us to stay connected to who we really are. And in today's society, we're always being forced to almost wear these masks, if you will. We're trying to not make people feel uncomfortable, or we don't want to say the wrong thing. So we're not fully free with how we think and how we feel all the time. And because it's so common and so ingrained in our society to be this way, that a lot of times people will find themselves looking in the mirror and they're still wearing these masks. And the meditative arts helps us find those tools and that source to let those masks fall away and really stay connected to who we are. And when we do that, it's a lot easier to redirect those energies or those words or those thoughts that are coming and lead them to that positive path. And so it's it's so important to stay present and keep that awareness so you can use that redirection rather than reacting, as if you were saying earlier.
Absolutely. And I mean, this, yeah, so, yeah, you see, this thing I learned in the past few last years of my life, I learned a lot, which I didn't know about myself as well. But for instance, one of the biggest lessons I or teachings was when I heard that we should never take anything personally, never, because whatever people say to us, whatever people do to us, it's got nothing to do with us. It's only them reflecting their childhood trauma, their insecurities, their fears. And when we start shifting this, people are not going to change. Their reactions are still the same. But the way we look at it, this changed completely. And there's this other thing that when we get triggered, and we know when people press our buttons and then we react, but when we start knowing ourselves, we realize that all the triggers, they are really unhealed trauma within ourselves. So what I'm doing, for instance, now, I learned it as well. If somebody triggers me, I think, thank you. Thank you for reminding me that there's something in myself I need to look deep. So how does this resonate with you?
Oh, it's so important, and I agree 100% in that we have, and that's one of the processes of cultivating a meditative lifestyle is you have to turn that focus inward, and you
Mhm.
have to be able to heal all of those past traumas. And there's traumas in our lives that don't go away and that they're always going to be there, but you have to face them, and you have to, you know, if you can do something about it, do it. If you can't, learn to find a way to live alongside of it and make the best choices you can going forward, but deal with it. Don't hide from it. Because if you don't find a way to feed that fire, or then that fire is always going to be at you. It's always going to be coming more and more. But if you can calm it down and give it what it needs to be on its own. Now, while it might still be there, it's not distracting you. And if you want to go through life and experience new opportunities and new things without having those past things pulling you down, you have to be able to do the work and look inward and understand that these past things are not you today. It's your choice on how we move forward, but it's hard to move forward when we have things that we've never really come to grasps with, and we've never spent the time and the work understanding how to really deal with that. And so it's important that we tame those fires before we move on if we want to find that peace, and that awareness in our life will deepen when we calm down those past disturbances.
See, again, this fully resonates with you. I told you that I'm a mental fitness coach, and see, I'm just speaking on some of you the points you mentioned before. Wearing a mask. When we are children, we play. Yesterday doesn't exist, tomorrow doesn't exist. We fully enjoy the moment. But then we get educated by our parents, by family, by society, and then we start learning, oh, don't do this, do that. And as children, because we are in a kind of hypnosis, in the theta brain wave, we take everything from our environment without filter. And this is how we really get habits, or we learn things, but it's not us originally. It's really something which we learn. And, and for instance, even people talk about these saboteurs where we judge ourselves, we judge others, or some people avoid, for instance, difficult conversations, or some people are perfectionists. But why? Because they learned it. They learned it. And very often it's about using our strength when we are very little, because we deal, if our parents fight, for instance, oh, we want to be mindful, we don't want to say anything. And so we have strength, but afterward, this strength, we kind of use and abuse them. And this becomes this saboteur. So the idea, you mentioned the word awareness as well, is to become aware of this. And only when we become aware that it's not us, it's really habits which have been ingrained in our subconscious mind. And when we can, first we get this awareness, then we can deal with it, and we can progressively replace them by more empowering habits whilst developing the right part of our brain, which is our sage, where this is when we become, we get this clarity, this confidence. So meditation is so much within this process.
Yeah, that awareness is so key, because a lot of times we get so far off track before we ever figured out that we are off track. There's these two old monks that are walking down this old dirt road after a huge rainstorm, and they come up to this big mud puddle, and on the other side of the puddle's this beautiful little girl, and she's standing there in a white dress and she's crying. And the older monk, he hollers across the puddle and he says, "Is everything okay? Can we help you?" And she says, "I need to be somewhere, but if I walk across this puddle, I'm going to get my dress all dirty." And so he rolls up his pant legs and he goes across the puddle and picks her up, puts her on his back, takes her to the other side and sets her down, and she's off on her way. Well, him and the younger monk are walking a couple miles further down the road. And finally, the younger monk is just furious and he says, "You know we're not supposed to touch girls, but you did back there at the puddle." And the older monk looks down and says, "I left that girl back at the puddle. Why are you still carrying her around?" And so many times in life, we're not even aware that we're getting so far down that muddy road until we've already spent sometimes days and weeks getting off track. And so having that awareness and noticing these imbalances by having that heightened awareness with meditation is what really allows us to have the power to yield to that and guide it down a positive road, so we're not getting 2 miles down that muddy road still distracted and frustrated.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is so powerful. And I have a question for you, because I'm not so familiar with Tai Chi and qigong. Can you tell me a little more, or tell our auditors a little more about that, about these practices, which are really very common in Eastern countries, I guess, in Japan and in, you know.
Yeah, so qigong is about 4,000 years old, and it was a very healing art. And there's many different paths in qigong you can follow, kind of for the spiritual side, for the physical side, the medical side, and then more for the physical. And Tai Chi was originally created as a martial art.
Mhm,
What happened was is a lot of the martial artists, there's an old story, and how true this is or not, if it's folklore or whatever, I don't know. But there's a story of Buddha Dhammo coming over from India and seeing all of these monks who were practicing the Tai Chi, and they were beat up and they were had injuries and they were not very healthy. And he taught them the muscle tendon changing and bone marrow and brainwashing exercises from Qigong, and
mhm.
integrated the health side of the training into Tai Chi. And nowadays, I bet 95% plus of people that do Tai Chi don't even understand how to use it as a martial art. They just do it for the health benefits. And there is, a lot of Tai Chi these days that's kind of taught like Qigong. Whereas, the originally Tai Chi was more kind of the combative side of things.
Thank you for the explanation. And another question which comes to mind is about breathing. We all breathe, but do we know how to breathe? And what are, what are the techniques which you really would like people to take on board for, you know, yeah, for breathing?
Yeah, breathing is a science, and often people refer to Qigong as the science of the breath because there's literally hundreds of different breathing strategies. And because of this, we broadly categorize them into yin methods and yang methods.
Mhm.
The yin methods are often deeper, more holistic style of meditations that help us learn how to draw that energy inward. And this is great for stress reduction, dealing with anxiety, good for boosting our creativity. An example of a yin style breath that we all do every day is if you ever listen to somebody sleep, you'll notice that their natural breathing pattern is a longer inhale and a shorter exhale. And
Mhm.
that's the body's natural way of bringing your conscious mind into your subconscious mind, which is where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming. And so we use the breath like this to tap into that yin energy or that inward energy. So in our meditation practice, we can lengthen the inhales, maybe do soft retentions at the end of the inhale to help bring that energy inward. Then we have the yang side of the breath. And the yang side of the breath's more aggressive. It's kind of like if you ever had to push your car, or you pick up something heavy, your natural instinct is to put tension in the breath and make it audible, bring that energy outward. This is very valuable because when we start understanding how to use the breath, now we can use it as a regulator to adjust our physical, mental, and emotional well being. Everybody goes through the day with emotional ups and downs. However, some people may be more like a roller coaster, others may be a little more balanced. But when you start seeing yourself get excited, we can use the yin side of the breath to help bring us back down to a balanced state. Or if we start feeling depleted, we can use the yang side of the breath to help charge us up and bring more energy into the day. And so using that breath as part of your practice is very powerful.
Well, this is absolutely very powerful. And when our listeners want to know more about, your academy and what should they do? Because you wrote several books, Jeff, didn't you?
Yes.
So can you just give a brief outline of these books? I mean, if you have just so that people know, because this is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, so if you're interested in this kind of style of training, you can check out my website, theyieldingwarrior.com. My most recent book, The Yielding Warrior, we kind of touched on that when we talked about the three pillars of yielding.
Mhm.
That book goes into teaching people how to integrate yielding physically, mentally, and emotionally in every area of your life. And so that's something where I've always been very passionate about. My new book that's coming out around the first of the year is called The Yielding Athlete, and that's teaching athletes how to use the meditative arts to improve their performance on and off the field. And so that's been a pretty fun project, and I'm looking forward to getting that out for everybody to see. Also, if you're interested in investigating how to start creating a meditation practice in your life, on that same website, theyieldingwarrior.com, we have a 2-week trial there where you can go in and check out some of our online programs there and see what we have going there. And so it's a way for you to get introduced to that as well.
Wow, this is absolutely fascinating. And this has been a wonderful listening to you, Jeff. And if if you were to give like 3 tips, for people who are on the edge, who haven't yet started meditation, what would it be for people been thinking about this, but really, okay, why should they start now?
Well, the first thing, if you could just go back and maybe re-listen to those 3 considerations, because I think that's really valuable.
Mhm.
The other thing would be, if you're on the fence to do this, make the mental commitment. And you mentioned earlier when you were talking about discipline, self-discipline is doing it regardless of your mood or motivation. You stick to it. And if you do 20 minutes a day, and you do that every day for a year, and maybe integrate some active practices throughout the day, which are easy to do, you can do when you're walking down the street or standing in line at the grocery store. If you do that every day for a year, you'll see so many benefits from this practice that you'll do it for the rest of your life, and it'll be one of the best things you've ever done for yourself. But you've got to lay the work. You've got to keep chipping away at that stone to see what the beauty that's going to come out afterwards. So make the commitment and do it. And if you do it, you'll be very happy you made that choice.
Well, I really want to thank you so much, Jeff, for bringing so much inside. I'm sure our listeners now that it gives them so much food for thought, and now it's about taking action. It's really about starting because when they start meditation, and this is going to change their lives. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you for our listeners, to be with us, and it's been fascinating. And I say, see you in our next episode. Thank you.
Thank you.